Joining us now, she's the new head coach at Georgia State, of course, coming over from UCF, where she spent this past year as an assistant. Of course, helped them be part of the NCAA tournament. Was at Cal prior to that, a standout player at Charleston. Clearly she hung out with me this year and decided to bolt, which is smart on her part. Becca Mueller joining us here and in the circle. Is that what it was? You just tired of me asking you questions, about
Couldn't stand it anymore, Elo. I couldn't stand it anymore. No, no, only joking. I loved having you. I'm gonna miss you genuinely, but thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
well, the bad part now is I'll bother you even more now because you're coaching
Even
at Georgia State, which I am fascinated by because I've always been intrigued by that school. Followed them from the Sun Belt. So let's start with that. What was it about Georgia State? Because I know you had interest in being a head coach. I know in talking in our talks that it was a long-term goal. You didn't have a timetable in it, but what was it about Georgia State that you felt was this is the right time for me to be a head coach?
Yeah, totally. I think, when they reached out to me like right after season and kind of said, we're going through these interviews. We want to know if you're interested. I was like, okay, yeah, let's like see what it's about and, kind of see like what their program operates with and the whole nine. And once I kind of went through that process, I had a Zoom interview. And after the Zoom, I went on campus. And once I got on campus and saw the potential that the program had, and I saw how much support it had, not only from the players, but the admin and the people surrounding it, I was like, okay, like this job is for me. I feel super comfortable taking this job and running with it.
You had spent time in the state when you were a volunteer at Georgia under
Mhm.
with Tony Baldwin and I believe Louis Harris Champer was the head,
Mhm.
coach. How much did that influence that too? That you were familiar with that state, the talent around that state from a recruiting standpoint, and that you have spent time there.
Totally. I think that especially right after I was done with Georgia, I actually coached travel ball for like a little bit because I was about to get another job and it was kind of like an intermediate thing. But I coached travel ball. So I actually knew a lot of the travel ball coaches. I was familiar with like all the tournaments that are already there. When I had like off time from Georgia, which like, you don't really have much off time in softball, but I would go to Atlanta and I loved the city. And I already knew, sometimes people can be hit or miss on Atlanta, whether it's like super sketchy or, you're either a city girl or you're not. I'm a city girl. So when I got there, and honestly, just being familiar with it from a personal standpoint and from a professional standpoint, having coach travel ball there, I was like, I felt really good about it.
Tell us a little bit about Georgia State, what you're inheriting, and what was it that attracted you there?
Totally. So what we're inheriting, maybe not too many wins we're inheriting, but definitely something we're looking to turn around. I think that what's there, and again, what attracted me so much to it was the potential that it had. And when I went there and I saw our facilities, and I know that the Sun Belt has wonderful facilities. Like there are so many programs, like think about UL and Texas State and all the programs that have great facilities. But when I walked on there, I was like, wow, this indoor is great. Like, wow, look at this field. Like, look at all the things we have. Like now that our central hub kind of is in Old Turner Field, and I walked up there and saw my office, and it overlooks the football field, and there's Brave stuff everywhere, and it's a lot of things that speak to kind of like Georgia kids, because Georgia kids grew up going to Braves games, and they grew up like going to Turner Field, and now that we're kind of reutilizing the space for Georgia State, it's kind of nostalgic for them. And honestly, I went to a game at Turner Field. I was like, that's really weird. I took a picture right there. But it was really, really cool. And I think all of those things combined is kind of what attracted me to it. And I think I'm inheriting girls that are really, really hungry to get better and really, really hungry to, not just develop, but also push themselves in all aspects of the game. And I couldn't ask for a better situation.
When you got the job, what was the message you had to the players when you got introduced there to the players that you're inheriting?
Totally. I think one of the things that I said to them was I kind of told them who I was. And I said, I'm a straight shooter. And something that I've made my career on is player development. And that's something that not only me, but my staff, right, that we build out is going to pride themselves on. I don't think it's fair that if they come in there and they don't get better or they don't feel like they're going to get better in any aspect. And it's not just like for me, it's the swing, right? But it's also defense, it's pitching, it's like learning how to work with people and managing people and holding people accountable and learning how to be held accountable. So it's an overall broad kind of concept of developing like as a player, as a human in the weight room, in the classroom. And I kind of told them like, this is going to be hard, And sometimes you may not understand, but I'm always in your corner and I'm your biggest fan. So, and I kind of just told him I was ready to roll and I was really excited to get with him.
The irony of this is you got to face Georgia State. This year, UCF hosted Georgia State. Georgia State was in a UCF tournament. It was the opening weekend, as a matter of fact. Ironically enough, that they were the opening weekend. So you probably saw a lot of them up close in person on this roster. How much of that will you use as you evaluate the rosters, and how much of that do you kind of like, it's too far in advance, I'm going to give you a clean slate? How do you balance that out?
Totally. I know that was so interesting that we played them. I was so like, wow, what are the odds that we actually like play them and now I'm going to coach them? But the cool part about that is I saw how athletic they were and I saw how talented that they were and I saw what they could be in those moments. And that's why, when I got the job and kind of, looked at what happened last year, I was a little bit shocked, because I was like, wow, like, they played so good. I didn't just watch them when we played them, but I also watched them in scouting them and, watching their other games at UCF. So I thought that it was kind of a cool, unique experience to see them like, okay, like I know that they have it in them. And it's just a matter of putting them in the right environment to bring it out.
All right. So let's talk about a little bit about your philosophy. You're working on your staff as we're recording this. What is the identity that you want, first of all, of Georgia State softball? What do you want the identity to look like?
I think like the identity I want them to look like is fighters. I want them to be gritty. I want them to be fighters. I want them to, kind of be like a never back down situation. I also want you to be able to look at them. And Jen used to always say, Jen Salling, she used to say like, they have a way, quote unquote. And so something I've kind of used is we're going to have a way, right? So the Panthers way, you look at them and you know that we're coaching them a certain way. The defense has a flow to it and a rhythm to it. And the offense has a flow to it and a rhythm to it, which says, I know they're being coached to do X, Y, Z. Instead of everyone doing their own thing, we're going to have unity, right? So you're going to see that, hopefully, when we play. And when it comes to like building out the staff, again, the staff is going to pride themselves in player development. They're going to be able to be that person that you can go to when you have a question. You're going to be that person you can go to and you can actually help them with the game. And that piece I'm really, really, really excited about.
When you look at your coaching staff, will you still run the offense? You've ran the offense at Cal, you've run the offense at UCF. Is that something you'd plan on still running at Georgia State? How do you envision your staff and how they would function?
Totally. So I love hitting so much. I am obsessed with hitting. I always have been since I was a player. And I think that it's kind of like how I made my career as being a hitting coach. So I think I'll always have a hand in the hitting. And funny enough, when I was in my interview, one of the panels asked me, I know you're a hitting coach, but will you be the pitching coach? I'm like, heck no, in America. There's no way you can catch me dead being the pitching coach. I'm just not passionate about it. I know we have to pitch to win. So don't get me wrong, but that is for someone that is a pitcher person. I'm a hitter person, but no, I do see myself still running the offense. I know that being a head coach, it's a lot different, right? Because you control the lineup. And so I think that level of vulnerability with the kids that helps me coach them as a hitting coach isn't quite going to be there as a head coach, right? Because again, I control the lineup now, right? So I say you play, you don't. And so that kind of changes our relationship. But I do plan on having people under me that will be able to help and will be able to speak to those things and will be able to connect with them offensively. So that way they still feel like they have a person in their corner that they can be vulnerable with. So I do plan on still doing the hitting, but I'm going to have backup, right? Going to have backup that they can always go to. I do plan on having, so with that being said, going to have a pitching person, then I'm going to have a defensive person. And then luckily enough for us, we're going to have player development as well.
What do you want your offensive style to look like for those that will watch Georgia State? What's your offense what's the style that you see in your offense?
Yeah, you know what I've always loved is a well-rounded offense. I really do like, because you never know what you're going to need in any scenario, right? So if you can't hit the bomb that day, can you lay down 3 bunts in a row and score a run, right? Can you hit a double and score a run? Like, can you steal a bag and hit a dog? Whatever it may be. Can you cause chaos if the bombs aren't coming. So for us, I really want us to be well-rounded. We're going to have speed. We're going to have slappers in the lineup, but we're also going to have people that can drive the ball 500 feet. And I think that piece gets a little bit interesting to manage, right? Because sometimes recruiting wise, you have eyes for a certain thing. But I think that if I can have enough diversity in my coaching staff where we all value different things, then we can get the different puzzle pieces and put it together.
You've been around, obviously, pretty impressive coaches. I mentioned you were a volunteer at Georgia, where Tony Baldwin was on the staff. We've seen what he's done as a head coach at Georgia. Lou Harris-Champer is a Hall of Famer. You went to Cal, helped build that success there for Chelsea Spencer, who was an alum. You spent a year here with Coach Ball-Malone and Jen Salin, who was an assistant now at Washington. What do you grab pieces that every spot you've been that you're going to apply to your as a head coach?
100%. And you say that, and I thought about this recently. I'm like, wow, how blessed am I to have different, like these different people in different aspects and different corners, because they're all so good at different things. And I like, wow, like I've really gotten exposed to these Hall of Fame coaches, whether they're in the Hall of Fame now or they're going to be. And like, wow, I'm so lucky. But you know, the different pieces and the different aspects of it, right? Like at Georgia, and I've said this before, like Tony is super blue collar and he's super like offensive development. And so that not only inspired me in like my work ethic, but also in like how you develop an offense and how you structure things and how you know, do it at the elite level every single year, which is crazy amount of pressure in the SEC, and how you deal with that and how you handle that. When it came to Coach Spencer, like I'm telling you, the systems that she runs and the way she does it is bar none, right? So we kind of joke it's the school of Mike White softball, right? Because you know, it kind of comes from him and it's inspired by him. And you can't deny that he's a winner. You know, he wins at the highest level. He knows what he's doing. He's in like 15 Hall of Fames. And Coach Spencer's style is super influenced by him. Therefore, my style is really influenced by her and by him. And so she definitely taught me how to run the different systems. Like, this is how you're going to run the offense. This is how you run the defense. And this is how it all works together in the bigger picture. And then being with Bear at UCF, man, the way she does her culture, right? Team culture, I was so impressed by, right? Bringing Rob Miller in to be the culture coach and, you know, creating a safe space where they can talk about things, and the amount of time, right? All Kara approved, but the amount of time that she does and really pours into the kids, I was really impressed by. And I think that not only like inspires the way I'm going to run my culture, but it also inspired me when I was doing, you know, my interview, right? Because now that you're head coach, you have to worry about culture more. It's less about the scale, more about like the overall vision. And it really helped me put things into words. And then Jen, I mean, can you beat Jen? Jen's a freaking 2-time Olympian. Like, not only was it just, you know, her elite levelness, right? If that's even a thing to say, but the way that she carries herself and the way that she operates is like, wow, she's a true pro in the game. So if I can model my players after her in a sense, right, of like the way she knows how to do it, she knows how to win, she knows how to do it at the highest level. And the coolest thing about her is the thing that she just kept saying over and over, it's about the team. It's about the team. It's about the team. And you kind of think in your head that someone at that level that's a pro, right, would probably be a little bit more selfish. No, complete opposite, right? She kept saying, it's about the team. If this helps the team, let's do it. And I'm like, I was always impressed by that. And she's able to keep, you know, the main things. And I love that. It didn't only help me last year, but it's helping me going forward.
We're speaking with new Georgia State head coach Becca Mueller here on In the Circle on D1 Softball. You've had it's interesting. You bring up the Mike White tree with Chelsea Spencer, was a longtime assistant at Mike White prior to coming to her alma mater, Cal. You obviously worked for Coach Ball-Malone, who's got her own coaching tree developing, including in the Sun Belt Conference, because Whitney Jones, you'll be facing her at some point when Georgia State and App State will be playing, which I have circled. I'm going to circle that when that schedule comes out. But obviously they come from the Tar tree. But what's interesting is another coach that obviously coached under Mike White was Megan Bartlett, who you know very well, and also a big influence on you. Talk about her influence on your career.
Yeah. So Megan, I was literally just talking about this yesterday too, is Megan, the thing that I just value that she gave me so much was how you treat your people, right? And how you treat your staff, how you treat your student managers, how you treat your girls, and what that looks like from like a loyalty aspect of like, hey, like she always made me feel like she was in my corner and she was going to fight for me no matter what. Right. And Like, even if I needed correcting, like, I was young at Ball State. I was like, what was I, 25? And so it was one of my first like real jobs. And she corrected me a bunch, but it was never a situation where she was crushing me when she corrected me, right? She was holding me accountable, but doing it in a way that says, hey, I know you can do better. This is how you do it. I'm in your corner, right? And so she really showed me again how you treat your people, right? And how you make them feel good and how you make them like feel empowered to make the right choices.
Yeah, and she's obviously a very good predictor of things because I remember she told me you would be a future head coach. She said like you don't get too attached. She's going to be a head coach real soon, and a real couple. She was right. So now she's going to brag to me now next time I talk to her. Rightfully so. She's going to like I told you so. You owe me there. So uh, what got you interested? Let's first start. What got you interested in playing softball as you were growing up?
Well, you know what? I have an older sister. Her name is Tina, and I'm like most competitive freaking person, right? Every softball coach is, but she was. Anytime she did something, I was like in her back pocket. So she started t-ball, so I started t-ball. I was like way too young to be playing t-ball, and my parents like, well, she won't take no for an answer, and so I just loved it. I love competing. I loved being out there. I love figuring out. I literally slid in t-ball. They're like, that's not allowed. I'm like, why? Like I told my parents, like, I don't understand why that's I can do it. So who cares? But no, I think ultimately it was her that kind of inspired me because I just wanted to play, I just wanted to be with her. So if she was gonna do it, I was gonna do it. And I was gonna make a competition out of it.
You ended up going to College of Charleston. You had a great career there. Had a lot of success individually. You were a two-time, I think, all-conference performer, all-region performer. You excelled in the classroom. Describe Becca Mueller, the player. What kind of player was she now? How would Becca Mueller, the coach, evaluate Becca Mueller, the player?
You know what? I was super intense as a player. I was all out all the time. And honestly, I carry that a lot into my coaching still, but I'm a lot more tactful now with the way that I kind of like am able to hold people accountable, I'm able to talk to people. But again, I'm a super straight shooter. So you could think that now if I'm a straight shooter and I'm tactful, what was I back then? A straight shooter, not tactful. But my style of play is just all out. Like I go 100%. I'm super aggressive. Like I literally never took a rep off. And if I did, something was wrong, right? And honestly, I did that because it was so much fun. Like I don't like doing things half-heartedly. I don't like going through the motions. And so when I played, I just was 100%, and I didn't really have another gear besides that.
Yeah, you were excelled there. Was coaching in your back of your mind when you were a player there? Because I think you majored in political science, right? You got a degree in political science. So when did coaching enter the equation here for you as far as your vision, as far as your long-term plans beyond softball?
Totally. Okay, this is actually hilarious because my plan throughout college was to go into law school until about my junior year. And I was like, maybe not. But the vision I had for coaching was like, you know what? People who go into coaching, they can't hang up the cleats, they can't hang up the cleats. I'm not, coaching's not for me. I'm obsessed with softball, but I got to go live my life now, all this stuff. And yeah, was I wrong about that? So when I got home for my senior year, after I graduated, I was helping my dad coach travel ball because he coached my little sister. And that's kind of when I got approached by Colgate, right? Colgate was talking to one of our, I think it was the recruiting liaison. And he goes, hey, Colgate needs an assistant coach. Do you want to be it? I'm like, sure, I need a job. So let's do it. And a week later, I moved across the country. And when I coached at Colgate, right, I was like, wow, I think this is for me. And that's kind of when I dedicated myself to it after that. Because there has to be, with coaching, you have to have that some sense of like, all right, you're going to have to go all in, You can't, like, you're not going to build your own knot. So it was after that year of coaching at Colgate that I was like, all right, I'm all in. Let's do it.
That's wild. What is it about? You're not the first coach that have come on the show and said they were thinking about being a lawyer and then got into softball. Karen Weekly wanted to be, it was going to be an attorney if she didn't get into, I think Bartlett wanted to be an attorney. What is it about? It's kind of wild there.
Dude, I know it's kind of weird, but I think it's because we all operate the same way. Like Megan used to tell me that all the time. She's like, you just remind me of me when I was young. And I think we're just a certain type of personality, a certain type of person. And the funny enough is I have a GA at Georgia State that I kind of inherited. Her name is Alex. She's a political science. She's in grad school for political science. And I'm like, that's really funny because you're like the same type of person we all are. And now she wants to go into coaching. And I'm like, that is just the weirdest thing. I think we all just operate in the same
Sure.
context, I think.
Fair. I think that's fair. How'd you end up volunteering at Georgia there? Because that was an impressive coaching staff you got to work with that year when you were volunteering there.
Totally. That was like a really, really, really cool experience. And so I remember that I met Tony at the NFCA convention. He was standing with one of my friends. And so I introduced myself, said, hey, and he ended up walking away. And in my head, I said, I wonder who's the volunteer there. And so I did some research and there's nobody. So then I start reaching out to a bunch of people and say, hey, can you ask Tony if he needs a volunteer? Hey, can you ask Tony if he needs a volunteer? And I finally found the right person that called him up, asked, and then lo and behold, he called me like a week or two later. And I moved into Georgia. I think I moved into Athens like second week of January.
Right, because you were there, 2019? I believe was the volunteer. Tony was hitting coach at the time, the associate to Lou Harris-Champer there. I'm trying to remember who was the pitching coach that year. At
Rachel
Georgia.
Fico.
Rachel Fico. That's a who's who of a coaching. So take me through that. What was it like learning from that staff on a day-to-day basis? Because that was a big turning point in your career, as it would turn out. Because obviously that would set you up to what would be coming ahead.
Mm-hmm. You know what? It really was, now that you say that too, because when I got the job, in my head, I was like, I need a bigger kind of like name on my resume. You know what I mean? Like if I have Georgia on my resume, I think I'll be okay going forward. And I ended up getting the job. And when I was there, holy crap, did I learn a lot. And it was like really, really, really cool. And I learned like how hard it was and how much work you have to put in as a coach. But I'm telling you, the practice setups, right? The Lou Harris-Champer practice setups were absolutely insane to me. It was like 4 lanes on the field. And it's like you have machines over here, machines over there. You have 10 machines on the field, all of which were in the hitting facility at the beginning of the day, right? So the hitting facility down the hill, all of which I had to, wheel up the hill that day. So I started about 3 hours before practice just for hitting setup. But like I said, it's like one of the coolest staffs to learn from, and especially at a young age. Like I was 24 then, I think. And I got to learn from that, especially Lou, and like the way she operates and how methodical she is. And then Tony, like I know he's a head coach now, but the way he operated as an assistant, I was like, wow, like that, it was so respectable, right? Like the way he respected Lou, the way he treated everybody around him. Like, you're at Georgia, sometimes you think you can become, kind of arrogant at times, but that's the opposite of who he is. And it was so humbling. I thought it was like the coolest thing. And then to have Fico there too. Fico is just like an all-star, right? She's so elite. I think she was still playing pro at the time. So I remember always like asking her questions and picking her brain on things. And you know what? Who was the student assistant? Was Brittany Gray, right? So me and her were always roommates. She's like one of the funniest people. And so again, she played at an elite level. So I remember just sitting there talking. It's much of like what I did with Jen this past year, Jen Salling, just sitting there talking, right? And ended up having really good softball conversations with really cool softball people.
How much of Tony's offense influenced you as far as your offensive philosophy? He's regarded as one of the best offensive minds. In fact, I've talked to Coach Ball-Malone, who's obviously coached with Tony. They're good friends from the USA softball, and she will pick his brain about offense. That's who she would go to. I would not be surprised if, she talked to him about you when you got brought to UCF. So how much of his offensive philosophy, which I've had him on the show, he's talked about it, how he learned it from Jerry Glasgow. How much of that influenced your offensive philosophy that you have today?
Oh, I think a ton. And it's not just like the mechanics of everything that was going on, but also the game planning. So the game planning of everything, this is how we're going to do it on a day-to-day basis. And I took so much inspo, especially having that type of person, right, in my back pocket and learning from him, and then stepping into my next job, which was Ball State, right? So I got to take all of those really cool things. I still have notes from when I was at Georgia that I still go and look at, because sometimes you forget things. And I know how valuable to my career that was. So I was able, and I'm still able to go look at those and gain some inspiration. So I think that, I'm always going to have a little bit of handprint of Georgia in my offense, not just Tony, but Lou too, because she's a little bit of a mastermind when it comes to things.
You've coached in power conferences, SEC at Georgia. Cal was with the Pac-12 at the time. Of course, this past year you were in the Big 12, but you've also coached, obviously, in the mid-majors, Ball State, obviously, highlighting that Colgate. Uh, Tell me about those experiences and the differences in coaching in all those leagues and how that's going to help you here at Georgia State from a recruiting standpoint, because obviously you know the area, you know the region. People probably know you from all the places you've been in, all the different conferences, but you've had there's pluses and minuses that each conference brings and each school that you've been has had, and maybe some things that you didn't have.
Right. I think there's a lot of inspiration, especially from, the highest levels of being able to see things like what in my brain, what I'm thinking about is like at Cal, right? Because we went in there in 2020 and it was kind of an interesting start to the situation and where were they at and what Coach Spencer wanted to kind of put into motion there. And we were a part of helping her put those things into motion, right? So taking that inspo and then putting it to Georgia State, right? It's a different level, but you can see like if this system is working on an elite level, that system can work here too, right? It can help get us going. And we're going to have to manipulate it a little bit to fit them, and that's totally fine. But seeing those systems and then seeing them work at a high level and seeing them develop year to year, right? Because it's a progress, right? It's a whole process and all of these things. And me being able to see the system from year 1 to year 3 showed me how it gets better and where you don't, and what areas you give up and what areas you don't, and what areas you pour yourself into and what areas you have to wait a little bit to really dig deep into. And so I really, for this next year, I'm really taking a lot of inspiration from that. And, I've been in a bunch of different conferences, and the cool part about that is recruiting a bunch of different regions, right? Being able to like already have knowledge of like the Georgia area and the Southeast area is really, really cool. But I've also seen different styles of play, right? So if we get a Midwest kid, I know what style of play fits a Midwest kid. I know California kids. 1, I am a California kid. 2, I coached out there for 3 years. And so I can take all those different players from different areas and understand what's going to make their style best because I know what they're used to. And I think that's something pretty unique to me because, like I've said, I've been in almost every region you could imagine.
Yeah, I think you've checked all the boxes there. You've
Right.
that's pretty good. Now you've also coached, like you mentioned, the travel ball.
Mhm.
How does that help you from an evaluating talent standpoint, knowing that you've been on both sides of it? You've been on the travel ball coach side, so you know how that works from an evaluating talent, and also from a relating to player standpoint, because that's where a lot of the players get influenced a lot is from their travel ball coaches.
And what's cool about that too is like the travel ball was at different levels. You know what I mean? Like there's the elite level travel ball, there's the middle, and then there's bottom. But I've
Yeah.
I've coached in like different ones, so I can tell you, like I can walk up to a certain level and say, all right, this girl's probably going this direction, that girl's going this direction in terms of mid-major, Power Five, SEC. I can kind of see where that pans out, but it's because again, like I've been there, right? And not only did I coach it, but I have a little sister who plays softball, so I've also seen her friends grow up and her friends develop. And so it's really given me like a firsthand knowledge of, this type of kid is going this way, right? Kind of like I was saying. But it also helps me too, is like, when I'm talking to travel ball coaches and like being able to relate to what they're going through and what the kid's going through at the same time. Cause I think sometimes we can forget that in our hustle and bustle, right? Sometimes it feels like to them that we just need kids, like we just need bodies, yada, yada. It's really not. But I can connect with them on a more personal level, right? Because I've been there and I've done it.
How are you a different person today than you were, say, when you started getting into coaching, or maybe when you were a player?
Yeah, I think I'm a whole lot more mature. That's for sure. Thank the Lord, right? But no, it's more so I think the overall, like in college, my brain, right? I'm good at like I really, really liked my teammates and I really, really liked hitting. So I had like 2 niches, right? Like I can unite people and I can hit. Well, the older I'm getting, the more well-rounded my coaching is getting, right? And that's one of the reasons I'm probably a head coach now is I can see things for a bigger picture, and instead of just, honing in on hitting and being obsessed with hitting, like I can understand now the importance of pitching. I can understand the importance of this is the defense, especially last year with, Bear being a pitching coach and Jen being as good at defense as she is. And I saw how they developed people and I saw how much work they put into it. And I saw a lot of value in both of those things. And so as I get older and my coaching style evolves, it really just becomes more well-rounded and more encompassing of a lot of things instead of just one, you know?
Sounds like you take notes, where you've been, you've taken things from each, and you've highlighted that earlier, but like even the 1 year at UCF, it sounds like you took in a lot that you'll apply here.
Totally. And I think just because they're such high level people, you know, and I'm a learner. I love to learn. And I thought that the things that they had to say were so legit, you know, and it's like I loved being in that environment with them because of their high levelness and the things that they had to say and their opinions on certain things. And, you know, they come from like, you know, if you think of a family tree, there's is Heather Tarr, right? So
Sure.
it's another elite level softball mind. And so for me, it's like, how can you not take notes? How can you not listen? Right? It would be arrogant to think that, you know, I've learned one way and that's the way, because that can't be true.
You also got a lot of options too, as far as picking their brain, as far as advice as a head coach. I mean, you got good options.
Totally. I know how, that's what I'm going back to is like, how lucky am I? How lucky am I that I have these people's numbers and can just pick up the phone and call them and say, hey, what, this doesn't look right. Or, hey, I need help here. Or like calling Bartlett and being like, I was like, what was your budget? What was our budget at Ball State? How did you manage it? Right. All of those things that people don't think about, but like, I have those people in my corner to help me. Like, how blessed am I?
Sun Belt Conference was the highest ranked non-power conference in softball, if you will. Was probably going to be a top 5 league now moving forward. No more Pac-12. How much of that attracted you as well? That you're in a league that's a multi-bid league, was a 3-bid league last year. It's a league that is capable of having teams that have hosted regionals, have gone to supers, with a lot of talent in that kind of Sun Belt area. I know in college athletics everything expands in it, but you're in a Sun Belt area, kind of that a mini SEC type. I remember, in talking to coaches in the league about it. How much of that was an influence too that you landed in this league?
Honestly, I love that it was one of the most challenging leagues, right? Because it pushes you to be your best self and it pushes you in every aspect, not just like the recruiting and getting talent in there, but you know, you see these other coaches and you see how good they are and how they've run these like top programs and how they've gotten so much attention to the Sun Belt because of how they operate. And it's like throwing yourself into the fire, right? And I was like, honestly, it just gives me, if anything, I'm like so excited to be a part of it. And I'm so excited to kind of just jump into it and learn how to develop and learn how to run a program just like they are.
You have a busy off season, not just now you're building a staff, you're getting settled in and all that, but you're getting married as well. So 2024 is going to be memorable for many reasons for you. So yes. I guess how are you holding up with all of that? Because you do have a lot on your plate. It's a fascinating time. You can't, you're not going to reschedule getting married and stuff, but you are balancing now a new job, being a head coach with the personal life of getting married here soon.
Right. I'm not going to lie. It is really, really busy. But the way I've been able to combat that is just one day at a time. I'm like, okay, if I can just do this on this day and then move to the next day, then I'll be okay. And the really cool thing I keep reminding myself about is that it's all good things, right? So again, how lucky am I? Like I get to be married. I get to be a head coach. I'm like living in Atlanta, which I'm pumped about. And they're all good things. And so just to make sure we keep the main thing, like these are all things to celebrate. Like, don't make them so stressful to the point where like, I'm going to hate them. You know what I mean? Like getting married should be fun. Like I just had my makeup engagement shoot like 2 weeks ago because we couldn't reschedule because of softball season. And the pictures turned out beautiful. I was like, how fun was this? And so I keep reminding myself that these are things to be celebrated, not to be stressed over. I'm not saying I'm doing a good job with that, but I do keep reminding myself that.
Well, it's a good test now to know you got the right guy, right? Is he helping here? Is he helpful?
Oh, 100%. That man is one that I couldn't have been luckier with who he is as a person. But as soon as I was like, dude, I need help with this wedding, this man sent out over half of the invitations. Wow. He is in charge. I know he's in charge of the premarital counseling. He's in charge of the DJ. He was like, he got his tuxes ready to go. He's like all dialed. He has his own itinerary. I'm like, okay, this man is legit, right? Like with every passing season of our lives together, he just keeps getting better and better. And I'm like, wow, he is a true gem.
And he's willing to deal with the hectic world that is softball.
He's willing to deal with me 100%.
Fair. A couple last things. As you get to know your players, and obviously you'll build your staff, and then you'll get to the fall, what are a couple things that you think are important in building that relationship? I know that's going
Mhm.
to be the number one factor is building relationships with your players and everything. How do you go in doing that?
I think the best relationships are built over time, and they're built with like little acts of connection, if that makes sense, right? So when you're walking into a room and you say, "Hey, how are you? How's your day?" Like you're actually listening to them, right? You don't just walk to the field, "All right, it's time to start practice." Like, no, it's actually, I'm in the dugout. They walk in, "Hey, how are you? How's it going?" "Oh, hey, I remember you had a Spanish test. How'd that go?" "Hey, I saw your mom on Facebook. How's that going?" And being able to talk about things outside of softball and even outside of school is the way that I've really been able to like build relationships with my student athletes in the past. And again, it's just having a little bit of a life outside of softball so that they can see that you're a human being. And I think sometimes that's lost in the daunting like title of head coach. But again, if you can show them your human beingness, right? You can show them your vulnerability. You can kind of show them who you are when you leave the field, then that connection of being a human, that connection of, you really do care about them as a person. And everyone says that, but like genuinely, you do care about them. They can see that and they can know that. And that's one of the things I really prided myself like in my coaching. And I plan to continue that.
What message, my last question is, what message you want to give out to Georgia State fans and softball fans in the state of Georgia, as you know, by spending time there? And that's probably one of the other reasons you also like it. It's a very attractive softball state
Mhm.
from like I mentioned, recruiting standpoint, but just people interested in softball. What message would you give them as far as coming out here supporting Georgia State softball? What message do you have?
Totally. I would just say get ready to support the Panthers, everybody. Get ready because we're going to come out there and it's going to look a lot different than it's looked in the past couple of years. And you know what? Like when Bob Heck was there and he gave so much to the program and everyone was so prideful, right? He had so much pride in the program. And I would just say get ready to bring that back, right? Get ready because I feel the exact same way about this program. I'm so excited. Like get ready for some energy, get ready for people to come out there and be excited about Georgia State softball, not just like the fans and the parents, but the kids. The kids are excited and they're ready to go. So get ready to support us as we go. We're going to need you.
That's Becca Mueller, Georgia State head coach, joining us here at In the Circle and D1 Softball. Congratulations. Hey, I'm excited for you and all. Like I said, I'll miss seeing you on a daily basis, but I'm excited for you, and you're not too far away. So, but congrats on this. I know we'll catch up soon down the road as you get settled in there, but congrats on the getting married here in a few weeks. Congrats on the job, and thanks for taking the time. I know during this whole hectic schedule that you're going through currently, you're taking a few minutes to talk to me, so I appreciate that, and thanks for talking to us.
No, Elo, thank you so much. I always have so much fun talking to you. And honestly, I'm going to miss seeing you almost every day. So don't be a stranger. We can talk whenever you want.